Okay, hello everybody. This is Marilyn Wilson from RE Technology, and we're going to get our webinar started now. Do this to gain more market share with major brokers, and I'm really excited to say that Wave Group and RE Technology are both charter members of the Real Estate Standards Organization, and we're just thrilled to see how much progress has been made in the industry. But of course, there's a whole lot more room to go. We really want to help live the vision of helping to create a more efficient marketplace, and RESO is going to show you how they're doing that and how you might be able to help. So before we begin, just wanted to do a little housekeeping. We of course love it when you guys ask questions, and you can ask questions throughout. We'll be watching, and if it's something that's relevant to jump in, we'll ask it right at that point, and if it's not, we'll hold them until the end. So feel free to answer them whatever you want. But if you go in the box and you'll see on the right-hand side, there's a variety of different tabs, and there's one called Questions. If you just click on that, it opens it up, and then it allows you to just send a little note, and we'll be watching for those at the other end, and we'll answer them as soon as we can. So thank you for your participation. Now I'd like to introduce, with the next slide, our panelists today. We've got some really, really neat people here that know a ton about this topic. So first we've got Katie Ragusa, and she's the VP of Product Development at Tribus and has earned her stripes leveraging data from many, hundreds of markets. I don't know, she'll tell you more. And Tribus has been around for a long time. They've created a really interesting hub of ways for seamless integration with a variety of different technologies. And actually, they were the first to do that in the market a couple of years ago. Next, we have Jeremy Crawford, who's the Chief Executive Officer who eats, sleeps, and breathes RESO. And he is not only an amazing leader, but an amazing resource to many technology companies, from the newest startup to the most well-established public company, to help them figure out how to leverage these important things that we're doing. And he'll tell you a lot about that. Then we got Sean York. He's the Executive Director of Technology for Homes.com. And he's going to tell us all about a case study and basically a process that he went through internally to see if this, if this really does make sense. Does RESO really help save time and energy? And does it open up opportunities for them to focus on some really new and exciting things, which they have done recently on their website? And then fourth, we have David Gumper. I'm proud to say one of my partners. He's the president of our technology consulting division within Wave Group. He was formerly the CTO for Michael Saunders, a very, very large and very progressive real estate brokerage down in Florida. So he can speak to it too from kind of the broker side. So a really interesting group of people that are going to give you some really good data. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. Let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy. And he's going to kind of give us an overview. What is this RESO thing, and why does it make sense, and how can it help all of us? So Jeremy, take it away.
Thank you very much, Marilyn, and thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate the opportunity to get an hour of your time and talk about who we are at RESO, what we're doing. But really today we want to focus on the successful efforts of Tribus and Homes.com, and we want to also highlight a couple other areas of successes. But essentially at a high level, and we'll be brief, at the Real Estate Standards Organization, our mission is to really create and promote adoption of the data standards that are going to help drive efficiency throughout the real estate industry. And our goal is really to help you all in your business with products and services and integrate into data that's available so that you can be successful as a technology organization as well as a brokerage organization. Today, we're a nonprofit, membership-based, open source standards organization. We are our own entity. We're not tied with any other entity such as NAR, with the exception of they are one of our board of directors. But today we have over 775 membership organizations that cover brokerages, agents and brokers, technology companies, as well as multiple listing services and other affiliated industry companies as well, such as the Wave Group, who's here with us today. And we also, in addition to facilitating the creation and fostering utilization of standards, we provide certification services out to all types of organizations to help them utilize our standards efficiently and be able to demonstrate that to other companies that you work with. Next slide, please. And essentially, we focus on two sets of data standards. The first standard we like to highlight is the RESO Data Dictionary. There are over 630 multiple listing services in the nation, and in the past, they've had historically their own individual data fields, data values, data labels, and our RESO data dictionary is to help provide them a consistency of fields and values in a standard naming definition, like you see living area field as an example on the screen today, so that when you access these data sets, it looks and feels the same for the agent, for the broker, for the technology company, for the consumer that sees it online, and also for the technology companies and brokers as they see it in their back-end technology solutions as well to make their lives easier. The second aspect, and this is how RESO got started in the late 90s, is the transportation of data. And I like to give Bluetooth as the analogy. Most people are very comfortable with hitting pair to take their Apple iPhone or their Samsung or Motorola Droid and pair it up with their headset. Bluetooth is the transmission protocol between the two, and we like to be as easy for you as possible in the industry for real estate data. We want to provide you a plug and play opportunity to pair your products and services with data sets out in the industry and make it as seamless as possible for you and as efficient. Next slide, please. So speaking of transmitting data, our latest standard is the RESO Web API. We started in '99 with a standard called RETS. From a working group perspective, we no longer are evolving the RETS standard. I like to say it's like Windows XP. Many people still use it, but Microsoft no longer provides updates to it. That's very similar to the RETS standard in the RESO environment. The Web API is the latest standard that actually leverages global technologies such as OData and OpenID Connect. While a little technical, those two items are standards that are developed by companies such as Microsoft and Oracle and HP and Google and Facebook to provide an easy mechanism to authenticate, like you log into Facebook today with OpenID Connect, and then access the data so that you can now use common tools from a developer's perspective, like Microsoft libraries, to plug right in to data sets. You can actually use Excel today, supports OData. You could connect Excel to a MLS's implementation of the RESO Web API. In addition, the Web API is there to support a lightweight aspect so you can get the data in real time and not have to download and replicate that data. So as you're looking to implement mobile options or use the mobile options in your brokerage and agent functionalities, it's there to provide a very fast, lightweight opportunity for you to do that without doing heavy lifting of copying data all across the nation. And it supports the needs of today's technology products and the needs of today's brokers and agents across the nation. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about how we work at RESO. I like to say we facilitate the creation and evolution of standards because it's really the subject matter experts that come together, typically direct competitors, that sit together at the table, just like Homes.com, who's with us today, sits across the table from Realtor.com and Zillow, and they work together to create solutions for business challenges that exist with providing products and services out to the industry. We typically have things sent in to our research and development work group, and that work group vets out the business challenge and creates a business case and sends that over to a specific standards work group, such as the data dictionary work group or the API work group. And we have many work groups we'll highlight in a second. From that aspect, they work towards a solution with all the subject matter experts across the nation. Once that solution's been provided and passed by the work group, a board liaison committee reviews it, and then the board of directors at RESO reviews it and hopefully approves it, and then it becomes an open source certified ratified standard. That standard then is delivered out to the industry to provide a business solution through data standardization for the business challenge that entered in through the research and development work group. Next slide, please. In addition to the research and development work group, we have many other work groups. The broker advisory work group, which David Gumper with us is the chair today, is another entry point into RESO for vetting out business needs of the brokerage community, so we can also do a similar process and pass those along to our many other work groups, such as the data dictionary, the payloads work group, the web API work group, internet tracking, who is working on tracking standards across the industry. A brand new work group is distributed ledger. They are actually working on blockchain-based technologies that are coming about in the industry, and how to catalog events of the lifestyle of a life cycle of a property using blockchain technologies, and that's something that is brand new. We also have a universal property ID work group, certification committee, and as I mentioned earlier, the board liaison and board of directors. Next slide, please. So in highlighting the RESO membership, from the brokerage community, we have over 900,000 brokers and agents that are represented through RESO membership. They're corporate entities, and many of the brokers there that work on products and services sit at the table with other organizations, and you can see some of the list here. All the large franchises such as Remax, Home Services, Keller Williams, Realogy, Next Home are members of RESO, all the way down to small independent as Michael Saunders and Company, and Hunt Real Estate. Hunt Real Estate is one of our charter members that have been with RESO for many, many years participating, even though they are a small brokerage entity. So we really put the brokerages at the forefront of helping their business challenges, as that's how we all succeed. In addition to that, we have many technology companies and multiple listing services that also participate with part of those nearly 800 member organizations. Next slide, please. So we like to talk about what is the North Star for the industry, and I mentioned it earlier, is that I would love everyone to have the opportunity to plug and play. From a brokerage perspective, there are many different products and services a broker needs to provide out to their agents to transact real estate. Without efficiently transacting real estate, none of us are in a successful business position, as that is the heart of the money and the e-commerce into this industry. And this is a slide provided from MoxieWorks, who was a company created by Windermere Brokerage Solutions, and they provide a data aggregation and products to over 150 MLSs integrated. And this is a slide where they want to show where the world should be, that you can take any aspect of products and services for your brokerage community and simply plug that right in to a RESO compliant data feed. So now you have products like transaction management, print marketing, which is still viable in today's world, lead generation, portal advertising such as homes.com, individual agent advertising, etc., and be able to plug that in as simply as possible, just like your Bluetooth device, so that when agents pick a product out, they don't have to wait 3 to 6 months for the data for that product to be integrated from their local MLS or other data sources. They can plug right into that and give plug and play interoperability and cross-platform interoperability through the benefits and successes of RESO standards. Next slide, please. A couple of specific examples. We've moved far past what used to be the property listing sheet in our standards. And with our standards efforts, we worked with the Department of Energy, NAR's Home Sustainability Organization, the Council of MLS, and many other organizations, not just MLSs, to standardize what we call green information and green fields in the MLS. So from this perspective, we have been helping MLSs add green information, home energy information into their MLS to be able to provide the consumers a better buying experience. But it's been proven that the more green information of a home that's entered into the MLS and transmitted across all the products and services, the faster the home sells, and typically for a larger amount. Even if it's maybe not the most perfect green home, it still provides a higher cost of sale because there's more information about that. And so these are some many successes of MLSs, where we have Portland that requires energy score as a local jurisdiction requirement for the transfer of property. With RESO Greenfields, they can auto-populate home energy scores right into the MLS, so the agent doesn't have to enter in that information. Bright MLS provides green fields and green data validation based upon RESO standards. New England Real Estate Network in the New England states, the MLS there, they automatically integrate solar power information to match home sale listings. Chicago actually integrates the local utility company data and utility usage, your standard utility bills, right directly into the MLS through RESO standards. And in North Carolina, Pivotal Energy is our first energy company, RESO Data Dictionary certified, and they're working with all the North Carolina MLSs to send solar data directly into each of those MLSs. And Cincinnati just recently added over 80 greenfields directly into their MLS listing input sheets to help their agents, their construction entities support home sustainability and help the brokerage community with faster transactions with a little more on the transaction dollar amount by having that information. Next slide, please. And so those are some of the benefits today. So we want to pass this over to David Gumpher. Marilyn, would you like to go ahead and reintroduce David and give a little background on the broker survey?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so David Gumpher, as I mentioned, runs the technology group within Wave Group. He's got years of experience on the broker side of things. Not only was he CTO for Michael Saunders, but he also ran through the group leading real estate companies of the world, which is 550 of the largest independents in the world, a group called the Marketing and Technology Advisory Committee, which really helps inform large brokers about where they should be spending their time and energy and what makes sense for them to work on. So he's done a ton of work on that. He's now leading the Broker Advisory Council for RESO. And he's also been at work behind the scenes for years and years and years, for any of you that are that deal with MLS data, I'm sure many of you do, trying to help make the IDX rules more consistent and particularly more broker friendly and more supportive of the technology companies that deliver that data to make sure that we can really that all of you guys actually can maximize the amount of marketing potential. So with that, I'll turn it over to David and he can walk us through. Let me tell you a quick thing about the broker survey. So this is the second time we've done this, and what we've been trying to do is track brokers' awareness of what RESO is, brokers' interest in using RESO standards, and you'll see that while some people like to tell us that nobody's asking for RESO standards yet, that is really not the case. So the people that were interviewed or that are part of this survey, many of them are from the 500 agent and up crowd, many of the largest and most progressive brokers. And you'll see that they're very, very interested in all of you guys wrapping your arms around RESO and helping them be able to leverage standardization in their businesses too. So with that, David, take it away.
Oh, thank you very much, Marilyn. Yeah, with this, the broker survey, it was very interesting to take a look at some of the 4 key points that came out of the survey. The first one is that brokers really are aware of how data consistency in the data is going to be a benefit to them and their systems, that they need that consistency to either stay competitive in their market, to be able to expand into other markets, and just as a cost factor in how they have to deal with data. So they understand that data consistency is much as important today as it was yesterday, and I have a feeling it's as important in the future. Next slide, please. That also feeds into that also brokers do feel very much that the data standards will provide lower costs and improve responsiveness of their systems, as well as responsiveness to them being able to meet market demands as the market changes. It will continue to move that way, and as you can see from this chart, they and recognize the fact that it is a benefit to have data standards. With the other piece of this was also to have insight, not of just the awareness of RESO, but were they aware? It's one thing to know that data consistency is going to be important to you, but where do you think that consistency, and if RESO can help you normalize those across your markets? And as you can see from this chart, there is definitely significant understanding from the brokers that they are able to understand that the value of RESO and having standards will greatly improve these areas of their brokerage. Next slide. And then the other piece of it is, what are brokers doing? And to ask, to make sure that they are RESO certified and that vendors are. As you can see from this chart, we still have a lot of room for improvement. Most brokers have not been asking for RESO certified in the RFP process, but it is gaining traction and becoming more. And as a consulting group, we do work with our brokers to be able to let them know in the RFP process that always make sure that the vendors they're working with are RESO certified or are working with RESO data. And that's the one thing I think we want to really attack with the broker advisory group that I'm the chair with, is to actually ingest more brokers so that we can get their voices on learning what new opportunities are available to us in developing those business challenges that Jeremy showed as the process of what we go through. It's really getting more opportunities to have an understanding how the brokers challenges and meeting with their consumer needs and their agents' needs on what those data challenges are, and see where we can evolve the standards. And this is one thing that with this group has been excellent, is the fact that they are constantly looking to evolve the standards around whether it's technology, such as in the green fields and incorporating them, but also in market conditions and what's happening in the market. So it's been an excellent group of people to work with. And if any other brokers that you know, or you are a broker, would love to join the broker advisory group, we'd love to have you and be a voice so that we can provide the work groups with more additional work, which they're waiting for. So thank you very much. Next slide.
Yeah, and just speaking of all this, if there's any of the marketing and sales types on the call, think about how this can be a competitive advantage for you too, right? Even if your vendor or broker is not asking you yet, which many of them are, as you can see, bring it to their attention that we're serious about this. We understand that you want to grow your business, and we're going to be the best partner for you because we're staying in tune with where technology is going in the future. Even if they don't understand what an API is and don't care, you can still talk to them about the fact that, you know, position yourself as a progressive company because you're part of this and you're learning how to leverage it effectively. Okay, so yeah, so with that, I'm going to turn it over now to, you can go to the next slide, please. To Sean York, who is from Homes.com. He and his team did a ton of work to help us understand whether or not all of this fuss really matters. Is it really going to save you time and energy, and is it really going to make a difference? And I think I'm excited to say on behalf of Sean that yes, he found that it is. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Sean, and walk through. Tell us what you did and what you learned, and what other technology companies can learn from the work that you did. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction, Marilyn. I believe I actually had some talking points on the previous slide if you want to jump one backwards.
Okay.
You asked me to lead in with that one. I'd be glad to.
Sure.
You know, I think this is a great slide to start with because it's so open-ended. You know, it's very hard to quantify the benefit of adopting standards. Or I guess I should clear that up and say it'd be very hard to quantify them to a short list that you could speak to on a webinar, right? I mean, they're enormous. And I think I wanted to lead in and start with an actual line right from the RESO charter, which I think kind of flows nicely into what Dave just said about the broker survey and some of our own goals at Homes. And that is, if I can quote, RESO provides an environment for the development and implementation of data standards and processes that facilitate software innovation, ensures portability, eliminates redundancies, and obtains maximum efficiencies for all parties participating in real estate transactions. And I think it's really important to kind of narrow down some of those items in there. And I can speak on the Homes.com side to some areas that, you know, we find of value in promoting these standards. You know, the first one I want to point out is we see a decreased time to market, right? When you're adopting these standards, whether it's for us to onboard new customers, where we can be talking about new markets where we're looking to bring in an entirely new data set, or if we're talking about data sets we may already process, but we have new customers that we're looking to get authorization or advertising and exposure in those markets on Homes.com. These certainly have helped us facilitate that. Also, when we're looking at not even just talking about customers, but we're talking about new areas that we're trying to generate activity for real estate agents. You know, when we have over 300,000 visitors a day coming to our site looking for this data, any day that we're still working on data issues or transformations or things that may be on this issues with this legacy platform, that's lost revenue. You know, we don't want to see that. We'd like to get this data out there and to our consumers as quickly as possible. Kind of the second thing I wanted to mention is related to innovation specifically. Those of us who work in this data a lot know that we have a fixed number of resources and a fixed amount of time that these resources spend working on setting up and maintaining this data. You know, at homes.com, I've mentioned before, we process over 600 different data feeds. And that's a huge amount of time and effort put into that. And if we can do anything to reduce that amount of time and effort that we put into that process, that's time and effort we can put into doing something else, something that would benefit, you know, our business or our customers. The third thing I wanted to mention is the relationships we have with both the industry and our customers. The adoption of these data standards help tremendously with that. When you're having less issues because the data is more easily transformable from one vendor to another, you know, it makes those relationships between, you know, your product and that vendor better. And it also goes, you know, all the way down the line to the customer, who's an agent in our case, and the buyer who are trying to make a transaction to limit the amount of confusion in that data you're trying to present. And the last thing I wanted to point out is, as far as the benefits of RESO for technology companies, is that it's a great avenue for collaboration. At homes.com, we really appreciate that it gives third-party validation to business issues we see across different partners, and allows us to present similar ways to solve those problems without, you know, from an outside third party. And RESO has been very helpful for that. So I want to kind of, you know, lead into our case study with that. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide now. Now, all this information is on this slide, so unfortunately I can't lead up to a big reveal for you because you can see it right there at the end, but I think I can go ahead and add some color to these individual points that are on here. You know, in the very beginning, what we wanted to do is prove that actually adopting these standards does provide the benefits that we expected them to. So that was the primary goal of doing this case study. We knew that the first thing we'd have to do is build a new platform to process this data, because we had a legacy platform that continues to process RETS feeds and things, you know, even FTP files that we still receive from some vendors, you know, to date. But we wanted to build something new. We wanted to be able to process data dictionary and web API feeds on that. And we knew there'd be some cost up front to do it. But we did expect that every one that we implemented would become easier because they're built on these standards. And as you start to work through these standards and weed out the issues, you know, through your development process, each one becomes easier and easier and you see less of them. And I think the good news in this story here in the first few bullet points is that, you know, we ended up coming in at about 300 hours to do the platform for the data dictionary and about 200 to do the web API. And I think the great story in that is it was very close to the estimates we had put forward for our development team and our management team to be able to do this. And that's just based off of using the documentation provided by RESO on what these standards, you know, what the access mechanisms were for these standards, and that it lined up very evenly is great. I mean, if we would have gone into this and expected it to be 500 hours of development and it came out to be 1,500 or 3,000 hours, we would have known that it's not a very mature platform. And then in the very end here, I think, which is the last couple of bullet points, we're just showing that when going through this process, we were able to validate that implementing these standards saved us a tremendous amount of time. Working with those providers you know, that are already RESO certified, we found that we were going from 4 to 5 day implementations on standard RETS feeds to being under 1 day in all the cases we did, which is, you know, over a 90% savings in staff hours. And that's, to us, was a tremendous success. And we definitely want to continue to move forward with doing more of these. So I think I'll be glad to talk any more specifics about that or details at the end if people have questions. But I think the next slide is going to hand over to Katie.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, though, before we jump.
Sure.
Because I hear this a lot of times, and some of you guys on the call may relate to this, that I'm sure many of you have already embraced the idea and understand in concept how standardization will make your lives easier. And yet sometimes it's really difficult for both brokers and actually for all groups, MLSs too, but particularly for brokers and technology companies, for the broker owner or the business side of the house to understand, because I'm sure it did cost you some money to do this case study, right, Sean?
Sure.
So how did you sell them? And I hate to use that word, but it's kind of the truth.
No,
sell
it
them
is.
on
It
the
definitely
fact that this thing is while you might not see something in the short term, that it's going to reap benefit for the company. So you need to trust me and let me work my way through this. How'd you get him to get off the dime and help you do this?
Well, I think the first thing we did, honestly, was a little more subjective. I think we kind of pitched it as, from the marketing appeal angle, we think it's important in our industry to be engaged in RESO. We know that the word of mouth of that is spreading, that's something that our clients are asking for, they're interested in. And for Homes.com to be part of, we're a charter member of the organization, and to be on the leading edge of the development for that was important. It allows us to advertise that, yes, we are doing this, we are engaged, and we are a partner in the industry and looking to make this situation better as far as data proliferation goes. I think that was the subjective side of it. The analytical side of it, we actually have, we use a tracking system, Jira sprint tracking system. We're able to look at all of the work we do working with any individual vendor and catalog how much time we're spending on those and what we're actually doing in that time spent, and found that a lot of them tended to be artificial problems. They're problems that don't really need to exist, and we don't need to be spending time on if we were to be using something like a data standard. And I think the combination of those two things was really enough to get our senior leadership on board to say, hey, we want you to pursue this and validate what you're doing.
So I'm sure many people on the call have tracking systems too, so they could do the same kind of thing where we could say we can save X number of man hours, or we think we can save X number of man hours. And now that Homes.com has gone first and proven that it's the case, that's probably the case for them as well. It may not be exactly the same number that you found, but it's going to be some multiple of significance, right?
Right.
So great. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions about that, you can throw that in the box, and Sean can go into that a little bit more deeply later. But let's turn it over now. If we can flip to the next slide. Let's flip it over to Katie Ragusa. And Katie is from Tribus, as I mentioned. She's kind of chief cook and product bottle washer over there, right? Katie, she does UX and UI and data normalization and product development and I don't know what else. Parties, I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much everything under all of those things. Yeah, I touch a lot of what we do at Tribus, and I've been around since 2011, so I've pretty much seen every role we have except for probably sales. So today, like Marilyn
go for it.
said, sure. Can we actually go back a slide? I think we skipped ahead one. There we go. So just to kind of anchor this talk about Tribus's process, I wanted to start with, what's the purpose? Why is it so important? So in case you're not familiar with who we are, Tribus builds custom software specifically for brokerages. So since we work solely in the real estate industry, obviously one of our most important products is IDX. Every real estate site wants listings on there of some sort. So we actually acquired an IDX company back in 2014. And ever since then, we've been working on improving our listing system, our listing data, and all of the features associated with that. So we do work with about 150 MLSs. So we get to see a lot of listing data. And I wanted to take you guys through what we've learned over the years. And so hopefully, if you're considering a project like we've gone through, you kind of know the pitfalls hopefully to avoid beforehand and certain things that you should be considering. So that all comes down to, when you're thinking of huge sets of data like listings, it naturally brings up conversations about standards. So basically what I wanted to make sure everybody kind of is on the same page about before we get into the project that we went through itself is standards, when you think about it and you're not so familiar maybe with the data, they could seem kind of restrictive at first. And so what we wanted to shine a light on is how powerful they are and how helpful they are for your company and your team's efficiency. So the job of standards is to focus on the needs of a collective group. So a lot of times you get caught up in standards and you think like every single decision or every single field may not make exact sense for your use case. So just remember that we're thinking of the group as a whole, all of the vendors, all of the brokers, all of the MLSs to make it easier for our entire industry. So standards are most effective when the entire group, or at least a vast majority, adopts them, because it gets everybody on the same page. I think about, you know, even the types of like QWERTY keyboards being popular. And if everybody was using different computers and every machine had a different keyboard, it would be chaotic, and there'd be a lot to learn every single time you step into a new device. So kind of similar here. We need the majority, MLSs, vendors, brokers, everybody to kind of get on the same page that the standards are a good thing. As soon as they start following them, then the standards can really take over and do their job, which is establishing order. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. And these standards actually affect even more people beyond who I just mentioned. So I kind of wanted to look at it through the lens of everybody that's impacted by these standards. So first off, probably the person that we forget about in a lot of these data field and listing conversations is the consumer. So, you know, they don't really have a whole lot of presence in these standards conversations, but, you know, they're forced to deal with whatever the sites offer them. So here they are searching for listings, and so your buyers are going to be really upset if they can't rely on the data fields that they're expecting and accurate search results. So that's a major factor, like making sure that your site or your product, whatever you're building, offers them all the data that you possibly can. And a really great way to make sure you're doing that is through these standards. Standards also are really good at limiting the possibility for errors that you might not notice otherwise. And that can impact sellers too. So, you know, errors that could occur during import because a field is wrong or something like that, being able to count on a set list of data fields will help make sure those listings appear on the website as expected, you know, right away, so that your sellers are happy too that are using your product. So we can go to the next slide. So this is a really good example. If anybody is familiar with RETS mapping and the listing data fields, if that's a product that you guys have already, you might recognize some of these fields or something similar. So what I wanted to show you guys too, this is kind of affecting the consumers, like I just said before about getting all the data fields, but it also affects the vendor too. So it's easy to skip data if you don't necessarily know what you're looking for. And it's very, very common that fields get named like nonsensical characters and just kind of something that seems random. You know, so how might we know that LM character 1052 equals what the high school is for that board? So it's really important when you get on with the data dictionary and get in there, you'll see that everything's named very logically. You really know what to expect ahead of time. If you can't figure it out for any reason, the documentation's great. So it's such a vast difference from working with data like this and just going through very frustrating revisions of having to map and remap data. We can go to the next slide. So more talking about just like benefits for vendors, since this is the group here today and how it impacts us. So if you're working with multiple MLSs, it's especially important because it makes it so much simpler for you guys to commingle data together from multiple boards. A lot of times different fields are named different things, and it just very much makes that normalization process of getting everything working the same so you can search it from one data set much easier. It saves you time as well. So, you know, some of you might spend hours wasted, you know, in meetings deciding how you want to make these decisions of what you want to map to which field or what you might want to convert over to something else. So the data dictionary gives you a very easy way of what's commonly supported and kind of a set of standards you can just take under your wing and say, here's our base list of things that we do. And you can even put lower level employees on your RETS mapping and different tasks like that because it's so much simpler and it takes out a lot of the more advanced steps. So the goal is get your more senior team building features, doing things that are impacting your customers in a much greater way than spending time going back and forth with RETS mapping. And we can go to the next slide. So this is a quick one. People get caught up in standards just because, like I said at the beginning, it could seem at times restrictive. So as we were kind of thinking about this, when to adopt standards, once anything is readily available and widely adopted, which is now for the data dictionary, and getting more and more adoption for the web API. So it's definitely time. Get on board with it. You're definitely missing out if you're not on there already. And then as far as how to adopt it, we adhere to RESO conventions publicly. It makes it a lot easier. We have an open API. We have a lot of integrations. So very much easier if there's a standard that we're following publicly, we can kind of adopt their documentation as well. But then internally, we have certain things, certain conventions that our company has adopted. So we might veer a little bit from it just because of standards that we've put in place at Tribus. So that's fine. It can work great both ways. So don't feel like you're stuck in it. Every single thing is set in stone. Next slide, please. So our specific process of going through this, in case anybody else is on the same page and making this decision now, and it was just to decide, do we stick with RETs? That's how we'd been importing data before, and move over to data dictionary RETs, or do we move straight to the web API? And so the process of going through that decision-making process was, our preference was obviously to use the web API. We can get the data right away, so listings and everything can show up much faster, and it's just the latest and greatest technology. So we're really excited about it, but unfortunately not enough MLSs are certified with the web API yet. So something you guys might not know, they can be RESO certified, but data dictionary and RETs is very different than the web API. So they could be certified for one or the other, or sometimes both. So if you're working with especially large brokerage companies, that's something to think about, because many of them are members of not just one, but multiple and sometimes lots of MLSs. So something that kind of made us have to stick with the RETs direction is, many of our brokerage companies would have, like 6 MLSs where 5 were web API certified and 1 was not. So our choices then could not possibly be only web API. It was either build both, which just wasn't something that made sense for us to maintain and build something like that right now when we see the trend going towards the web API. So we started with RETs and hope this is just going to stay as an evolving project that we continue building out. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to show you guys a quick picture of where we ended up with this project, and I won't go through every step, but it's a good visual, and we use it for MLSs to really encourage them to get on board, to see it from a vendor's lens and kind of see what we go through to get this data on a broker's website or on an app that we're building. So these are all the steps that we used to have to go through before the data dictionary. And you can see there's a lot of repeated steps and a lot of just back and forth where, any intelligent person could look at this and say, we should be able to cut some of this out. So if you go to the next slide, you can see what our process is today. And we feel a lot better about this. Like Sean was saying, saves us a lot of time internally, gets our brokers launched faster, and saves a lot of money. So it made a huge difference. And the biggest thing is that we can count on really good data getting imported, and we don't have to worry as much if we miss something. So next slide. Just a final thought in case you guys are about to go through this type of project just like we did. Very obvious, the first two, read the documentation. I just wanted to point out, we read a lot of documentation at Tribus, API docs and things like that, and it's actually very well documented, so don't be scared of it. Very easily to read, even if your stakeholders or something want to take a look. Our sales team uses it if clients are wondering what fields we support, so it's great. Stay up to date on which MLSs are certified. Just like I said, it could differ between web API and RETs. And then for our developers in the room, just pay attention to the offset because it isn't 0. And now I think we're going to turn it back over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Katie, and Sean, thank you as well. So as Katie and Sean have very well established companies, We oftentimes at RESO have a huge benefit for startup companies. I know that Katie and Sean talked about converting from our older standard of reps and legacy data formats as moving to the RESO data dictionary. But what we really like to tout is startup companies have often had a barrier of entry into this industry because of the heavy cost associated with integrating with MLS data in multiple markets. There's oftentimes MLSs that only have 100 to 200 agents as subscribers, and from a market share perspective, spending thousands of dollars to build up a data feed in those markets is cost prohibitive when you only have a couple of hundred potential customers that might only be paying 20 bucks a month for the website product that you offer. Well, fortunately, with the movement with RESO standards, we now are providing closer to that world of plug and play, and we have many startup companies who, one, has the benefit of not to have to convert legacy infrastructures over, but two, they actually get a leg up to where they can go immediately into the new RESO standards and move right into the efficiencies that are there, the cost savings that are there, but also the time savings of actually getting their product out into the industry. Next slide, please. So as we did the case study, as you saw with all the great details with homes.com and working through case studies with Tribus and others, MyTheo is actually a startup company that started just in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they were really only integrated with the San Francisco Association of Realtors, and we're moving into the San Jose market, which is MLS listings. So we decided to do a case study with them as well. What's interesting about MyTheo is their development team is actually in Australia. So they're not very familiar with the MLS market of the United States, the data market, the technology space, never had dealt with any aspect of RESO standards, and they were looking to integrate and launch in CRMLS, which is the largest MLS in the nation at today, 93,000 plus agents, and MRED, which is approaching 50,000 agents as well. And so they decided to move directly into using RESO standards, and just after 2 markets, as they had set up San Francisco in the legacy world without the RESO standards in place of today, they saw 40% reduction in the resources and the time needed to be able to take the product that they had just made and get it out to market. That's really amazing considering that is just 2 first markets for them. And they see additional efficiencies as they add additional markets and gain speed, just like homes.com has. So to take a look at a startup success story, what we have today is the ability to have companies, as I mentioned blockchain earlier, there are a huge number of blockchain-based companies like ShelterZoom as an example. ShelterZoom has gone directly with RESO compliant technology on their back end so they can plug and play. They've been able to directly implement into MLS markets quickly because of RESO standards. And MyTheo, which is a case study with full detail, it's approximately 15 pages on our website when you download the full case study, provides the detail for startup companies exactly what to do, what they did, how to leverage RESO standards, and really how to jumpstart a startup company in this industry and get the product to market so that your sales team can focus on selling the product, and your brokerages that are startup brokerages with new models such as entities like Compass, Open Door, and really Next Home as a new franchise that's moving quickly, and Lake Homes Realty, and be able to get that new version of a brokerage set up, broker teams, those type of new configurations that are out there, and move quickly into new markets without having the overhead that has existed in the past, and be able to provide a competitive landscape for all of those new great ideas that are in many other industries already today. And so I just wanted to touch on that from a startup perspective. Next slide, please. So I wanted to touch on just a couple of things as what's coming about. A big topic in the industry today is that traditionally brokers have had their agents put their listings directly into the MLS as a point of entry. There are a lot of great softwares out there in the industry that can edit listings, not just the MLS. but we need the opportunity to be able to update these with the changes. So imagine an agent shows their consumer, their seller, here's your home on Zillow, and here's your 12 photos, or here's your home on homes.com with your 30 photos, and the consumer says, I don't like those photos, I want new photos, and here are the photos I'd like for you to upload. It would be great if the agent could just use an app on their phone and zap it directly into the MLS. So our RESO Web API work group has just passed a new API specification that allows the broker to insert listings into the MLS from a product of their choice. We call this the update specification. So the next version of the RESO Web API supports the bi-directional aspect of data. So not just your ability to access an MLS and consume the data, but the potential that you can have in the future to push data back into the MLS. This may just be a quick snippet of data, like changing the list price or changing photos, or this could be something such as Project Upstream and the upstream entity, which is going to provide an alternative approach for brokers and agents to push an entire listing into an MLS utilizing RESO standards. So that's been work group approved, and we hope to see MLSs starting to implement that next year. Currently, California Regional MLS is already working to implement the update API specification to allow their 93,000 agents the opportunity to have the MLS input of choice from their perspective and from their broker's perspective. Our next version of the data dictionary, as I mentioned earlier, we are working on expanding the data sets. Roster management for brokers and for technology companies has been a mess because membership systems within association of realtors as well as MLSs are often separate from the multiple listing services main software. So we have taken on the efforts to standardize membership system data to allow the ease of roster management for brokers and technology companies. Lockbox data, typically we're 2 to 3 lockbox companies nationwide, such as Supra and CenturyLock and PrimPoint. We oftentimes see large franchise brokerages that have lockbox data in various formats because they span multiple markets that use various lockbox systems. We're working to standardize that data so a broker can have a common view of lockbox activity no matter what the technology behind that lockbox is. Days on market is one we've been talking about since 2009 at RESO, and we've actually started to take that on and work towards days on market. So these are just a few aspects of what we're looking to do to update the next version of the data dictionary and make it richer, not just in version 1.7, but keep evolving these type of standards moving forward. One item on our list is actually transaction management interoperability as well. So when an agent wants to do transaction management within a platform such as DocuSign or SkySlope, we're working to extend our abilities to provide interoperability between those platforms if 2 agents are using 2 separate platforms. And those are some future things that are not even on this slide today. And then finally, I mentioned earlier our payloads work group. Many aspects of data management for technology companies, brokers, and agents are just agent websites, typically known as Internet Data Exchange or acronymed IDX. With IDX, you typically get different fields MLS to MLS where you have to change the data importer you might need to use. We want to provide that similar plug and play functionality, and so as such we are creating a standard IDX set of fields and values that every MLS in the nation are going to implement, so that if you are an IDX website company or it's one of the products that you provide out of your suite of products, or internally as a brokerage community for your agents, you'll be able to have a single data importer that can get the same set of metadata, the same fields and values without breaking that data importer MLS to MLS. So you know exactly what to expect. And instead of some MLSs have a very small set of say 20 or 30 fields, our RESO IDX payload is going to have close to 200 fields, and that will encourage the MLSs that are not providing you a rich data set today for IDX websites to be providing that in the future. And we will be certifying MLSs on that, and currently they will be required to implement that For those of you that may not be aware, the National Association of Realtors implemented an MLS policy mandate in 2014 that all MLSs that are realtor owned and or operated, which is about 95% of them, must adopt RESO standards and must keep current with RESO standards within 1 year of an adoption. And their ability to demonstrate compliance with NAR is through RESO certification services. We have actually certified over 1,800 organizations in the past 2 years on RESO standards, and will continue to do so as a service to the industry. So those are a few things that are coming, but also we're looking at blockchain technologies. We're looking at working with mortgage and lending institutions. We're looking at new construction homes and how to standardize that information. We're looking at building permit data, and we're looking at expanding our standards to better support the needs in the Canadian real estate market as well. So we have quite a bit on our plans for the next year, but we really would love to have your input to see what your challenges are, so we can augment those plans to be able to make sure anyone that's on the call today or has product companies or brokerage companies that need some assistance, send those in to RESO so we can get those in the queue to help your specific business needs with brokerage transactions and products and technology solutions out to the real estate industry. Next slide, please. So a couple of aspects for getting started, and we will be sending you out after this webinar today a thank you email that will have some additional links and references. We have developer references to help you get started. We have free open source toolkits and various platforms such as PHP, Java, Python, etc., that you can use to plug directly into APIs out there in the industry that are RESO compliant. Those are free and open source. You can use them as a client, or you can use the code inside your own solution. We have an organizational unique ID and an API that's available, and this is free. We give every organization that distributes data an OUID so that you can understand where the data is coming from, and it will help you move market to market. Companies like NextHome, who added over 50 MLS markets in a year, are using the OUID to keep track of the associations, what MLSs they're tied to, and who's sending them data. For the RESO Web API, we have all the specification and technical documentation, as well as all the certification requirements. So anyone that would like to be certified, it's a RESO member benefit as well. There's no cost to members to do that. We can help you with that, and all the documentation's there on our website. The RESO Data Dictionary, we have created a full English version of the Data Dictionary Wiki that's available to use. And then from that wiki, you can also download the full Data Dictionary in XML or CSV. And for those of you that are a little more technically aware and wanting to use this within your data schema operations, we are close to releasing an EDMX representation of the Data Dictionary in the current 1.6 version. That should be out in the next couple of weeks. Finally, on our website, you'll find all the great case studies we've talked about today, plus other mini case studies we've done, and we'll be doing more case studies throughout 2018 and 2019. And we do offer a free RESO marketing toolkit. There's a lot of material that's available to you, slide decks, flyers about benefits of being certified, using RESO standards, being a member, attending RESO conferences, logo kits. Those are all available and free to use. You can go to our website and request the free RESO marketing toolkit and select what pieces of that you might want, and then the RESO staff will make sure they put that together and send that out to you. And again, that is free and available to you. Next slide, please. And one other aspect that we've partnered with the Austin Board of Realtors, with CoreLogic, and with Bridge Interactive, which is a Zillow Group company, for free MLS data access. This is developers access that you can request on our website. The URL is there, and we'll send it out also in the thank you note, to get free access so that your developers can work on proof of concepts and integrating data. Both of these solutions are RESO compliant. It's the CoreLogic Trestle platform and the Bridge Interactive API platform. They are both RESO certified for the API and the Data Dictionary, and you will get Austin Board of Realtors data. It is real data. The only difference is backdated 365 days. So it's a year old, but every day the data moves just like it's real data moving. They've just backdated it 1 year from a developer's perspective. So you can get access to that. Once you fill out the form, usually within 24 to 36 hours, you'll get an email from the Austin Board of Realtors with your credentials for both Trestle as well as Bridge Interactive. They will provide you both at the same time, so you can take a look at both platforms, as some MLSs use one and some MLSs use the other, but both are RESO certified. And again, that is free of charge and available to you on the RESO website. Next slide, please. Finally, RESO hosts 2 conferences a year, spring and fall. And our conferences are not typical conferences. We get work done at our conferences. We have on-site work group meetings. We have brainstorming sessions. We have sessions with brokers, sessions with technology companies. And a big aspect is networking, what your challenges are and what potential solutions are. We limit attendance because we want it to be an interactive experience. We have presentations on how standards are being used, just like Tribus and Homes.com presented in the spring. A lot more technical detail of what they're doing to integrate RESO standards and being successful with that. And we have presentations for what we're moving to in the future, in addition to the on-site work group meetings. Our early bird rates are very low, always under $400 for members. That's less than half the price because we feed you breakfast, lunch, and hosted receptions. And as an example, the fall conference of last year, we had 57 speakers with 3 days of content, business and technical tracks, a data competition where we gave out $25,000 in prizes. The winners are on our website if you want to look at their entries for those that won a piece of those $25,000 cash prizes. And these are really interactive sessions and networking sessions to be able to keep evolving what we do. So this is not a profit center for RESO. It's our ability to help the industry by bringing you all together in an affordable manner. And quite frankly, we can't do it successfully without the sponsors. If any of you are interested in sponsoring any of our events, please reach out to us and we'll connect you with the opportunities. That's how we keep the costs so low, because we want to make sure you're there, giving us your challenges, working to shape the future to make it a much more beautiful future for the world that we live in with real estate data, helping the brokers and agents make their transactions. Next slide, please. Marilyn, I think we want to pass it off to you to open it up for the Q&A session. I think we have some questions in the panel. I can't see them, but if you want to do an intro and maybe help us out with the questions that have been sent in.
Yeah, so one of the questions, and maybe this is just a quick one for you, Jeremy, on the conference itself. Who should attend that? Because of course there's people on the call, there's some that are more technical and some that are more on the business side. Who should come to the fall conference?
Absolutely, great question. So for our fall conference, we do business and technical tracks. We typically have a 30% split roughly between technology companies and MLSs, maybe a little more between those two organizations, and then the brokerage community. So you will see the brokerage community, the multiple listing service community, and the technology company community come together. Oftentimes you'll see chief product officers, chief technical officers, a lot of product managers. We have a lot of data junkies from the technical side, and we often have CEOs and brokers that come in as well and come to the business tracks. We try to tier the agenda to have the first part be more business-based and standard successes. And then as you get to the latter part of the agenda, we break out into technical sessions and on-site work group meetings. So you can tier your attendance based upon what you're looking for. Our agenda for this event's about 90% full, and we're a few weeks away from publishing it. But all of the past agendas and presentations are available on reso.org for the spring we just had in Denver, as well as San Diego last fall, Austin last spring. So you can see that. Members actually get exclusive access to videography. So if you are a RESO member, we do videography for the conferences and make that available to you in case you were unable to attend for a conflict inside your own operations or another industry event. But we often have a variety of types of attendees, from many CEOs all the way down to CTOs, product officers, data engineers, software engineers. It's quite a collective set of people that work together for the good of the community during the RESO events.
Gotcha. So here's another one. Apparently someone, kind of like what you were talking about, Katie, somebody works in multiple MLS markets for some of their clients and has found that some of their MLSs are not Web API certified. If someone wants to get engaged, if a tech company wants to get engaged with RESO, and the markets that they're working in are not yet Web API, how do they go about still participating? Katie, maybe you want to take that one since you brought that topic up.
Sure. I mean, so there's still an alternative to use RETS data. That's what we did. So the data dictionary is RETS format as well. So, you know, it's a totally different process to map in the data and import the data instead of calling an API, but it's definitely still possible if the MLSs you're working with aren't yet on the Web API. And I would say, you know, that's gaining traction with a lot more MLSs pretty rapidly, and that's part of our mission too, about continuing just to have this conversation. So hopefully all of those will be Web API certified soon.
And Jeremy, do you want to talk about where a technology company can check to see if their MLS is Web API certified?
Absolutely. RESO.org/certificates. Anyone that gets certified at MLS, a brokerage, or a technology company such as Homes.com and Tribus, we publish that out to the community. Not only do we publish it, we've added the organizational unique ID to all of those that are certified. And we also even provide that in a JSON output, because we have some people intelligently tie what standard they're certified on with what data importer they're using to make it even easier into the data integration that they're doing. So RESO.org/certificates, you can find everyone that's certified. Many MLSs you'll see are certified. As Katie did mention, many MLSs have been certified on the data dictionary via RETS. We are pushing forward with moving to make sure the data dictionary is available to you via API. As you see the case studies from Homes.com, the value add of having both the data dictionary and the API together from an MLS out to your organization for integrating data is far superior than having just one or the other. So RESO is putting forward efforts and working to update some of our policies to where in the future we will be looking to have all the MLSs provide you the data dictionary on the Web API. And if you have any questions whatsoever at any time, if someone's certified, what version, email me, jeremy@reso.org, and that's my cell phone on the screen. Email me or call me and just ask me. I'm usually pretty quick to respond unless I get caught up like last week in Inman Connect. But normally I'm pretty quick to respond and can help you out, and also can help you with the local contacts at the MLSs. And if the MLSs are in development and maybe they're close and they're not on our website, I have all that information at my fingertips and can let you know something such as, don't implement RETS for that MLS today because they're 90% there with the API, and most likely they'll be done in 2 weeks. So if you happen to not see them on the certificates page, just send me an email, because I want to make sure you have the accurate information so you can start from the best point possible.
That's great. So one more final question for you. This is one for you too, Jeremy, I guess. We hear this too. We hear sometimes technology companies saying that they're RESO compliant. And even some people saying that they're RESO certified. Can you explain kind of what does it mean to be RESO certified as a technology company, or what's the proper way to describe your involvement with RESO so that you're not overstating it or understating it to your potential customers?
Absolutely. So when you join RESO, we do send you a RESO logo kit so you can advertise that you're a RESO member, that you're involved with RESO. However, when you want to publicly claim, say in press releases, news articles, and blogs, that you're RESO compliant, we really prefer that we help you with that, make sure it is correct, and do that through certification services, which are also, as I mentioned, a member benefit. So from a RESO compliance standpoint, we want to provide you certification to be able to truly stamp that. The process isn't too detailed. Tribus just got RESO certified about last month, about a month ago, and I think it was a pretty quick process for them. We will certify MLSs on their ability to distribute data and to do it in the data dictionary format, and then we will certify technology companies on their ability to distribute data if they do, such as Pivotal Energy with solar panel data, and distribute it in the RESO data dictionary format. But we'll also certify technology companies and brokerages on their ability to consume data. We have a client certification program that we also provide out to the industry so that you can demonstrate you're RESO compliant in consuming data, and we can help you out with that. But we really want to help you say that you're RESO certified when you do communicate to everyone that you're RESO compliant. Many people say they utilize RESO standards. We find that completely accepted. But when they publish out material that says they're RESO compliant, we really want to move you into RESO certification so that you can also have the logo RESO certified on your website and even use that in any of your print and advertising material as you see fit. We give you the rights to do that. And our logos are registered trademarks now as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you so much to our panelists. I thought you gave some really practical and interesting information for everybody. And again, you see Jeremy's email on the screen. He answers, as he said, pretty much in real time. So if you have any questions, of course, you can go to reso.org or go to reach out to Jeremy specifically at reso.org and get started on this stuff. And I'm sure if Katie, David, or Shauna, I'll volunteer you guys too. If someone has questions as from the technology side, if they can reach out to you too, that would be awesome. And maybe you can give them some practical advice of what to do and not to do. So thank you, everybody. As we mentioned, we will be sending a recording of this along with links to many of the resources we described today. So feel free to forward that on to anybody else in your organization that may have missed it today. And good luck. We hope to see all of you at the conference in the fall. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.